good day, everybody. Welcome back to our Working Together series, live with Rabbi Karmi Ingber. We're just waiting for the Rabbi to show up in the Zoom room. I'm just sitting here chatting with our friend Rod in Texas. Rod, you're live on the air. Hope you're doing well down there. We've been chatting for the last 10 or 15 minutes. Always nice to get in the Zoom meeting early. So looking forward to hearing what the Rabbi wants to share today. Should be exciting. Oh, I can't hear you, Rod. Your mic's on mute.
Well, it helped to turn the mic off of mute.
Yeah, there you go. You're good.
I hope I wasn't muted the whole time. You could hear me before we went on the air, right?
Before we went on the air, yeah, I could hear you fine. But now you were muted for the first minute. How's everything down in Texas?
Fantastic. We're supposed to be getting some beloved rain in the next couple of days. It's going to be nice.
And we had good rain yesterday.
Oh, good.
Rain for the whole day almost, and I had to patrol in it, and
Oh, that's also fun to do that.
Yeah, well, that's why there's umbrellas.
Right. Stephen just made it in from the UK. Good to see you, brother. I like the nice hue of light. It's very relaxing.
Wow. So have you got any updates on your chatbot, AI chatbot? Any
You know what?
feedback?
No, I don't. I don't. We've been experimenting on some other things. The chatbot deal, I was kind of waiting to see if there was going to be any hiccups. But so far, no one has texted me and said, this is not kosher or something wrong with it.
No, answer's either in the database or it's not. And it's a very useful tool.
That's the advantage of having it set up like we have it. It's not some general knowledge thing.
Right.
So what I want to do is I'm going to add to it later on because I can add other PDFs and it'll just search them out. So it'll be fantastic.
Amazing technology, and I hope to see that grow. And
that's
at
hopefully
netivonline.org.
Yeah, Netiv Online. Yeah, NETIV online on .org. You know what? I hopefully as technology grows, we will also be able to master it and do even more amazing things for the sake of.
Hi guys.
Hey, Rabbi. How are you? It's good to see you.
We're talking about amazing things you guys are doing on online here.
We're just talking about technology. We have a AI chat feature on the website with information, anything you want to ask about the Noahide code, law, etc.
Right.
I've got it loaded with a PDF from the course itself, the yeshiva course. So anything that you could want to search when it comes to Noahides, you can search it. It's right there. It's very cool. So I'm going to add to it later on. And
it'll grow.
It'll grow.
Just was asking him if he had any feedback on it. We know it doesn't replace a rabbi, that's for sure. But Rabbi, so good to be with you. How's everything in Israel? Everything safe? We've been hearing of rocket fire and stuff like that. You're all good where you are?
Interesting miracles here, it's pretty interesting. They were supposed to send 3,000 to 6,000 today. That was their plan. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, I heard that.
And that was the preemptive strike, and they got it down to 300.
Wow.
And it was pretty nuts still that a country is tolerating 300 missiles being sent at it in a day. But it was supposed to be 6,000 before the preemptive strike.
But you're all safe where you are.
These are supposed to be drones or missiles?
Both.
Wow.
I think one of the things they took out was the problem is when they take out their longer capability, the short stuff is harder to stop because it doesn't really get tracked. So it's just it's right in the border. And people, I have friends, I have students that have moved out of their homes.
Well, I heard the IDF. I heard the IDF did target 1,000 launchers.
Yeah, that's what happened this morning. They knew they were gonna fire, and they were planning on firing 3,000 to 6,000, and instead they
only got off. They
only did 300 because they destroyed a lot this morning.
Good stuff. Well, Rabbi, I'm going to step away here and turn it over to you. So good to be with you, and glad you're safe, and we hope you're doing well and always enjoying what you've been sharing. We did get a good number of views on last week's message, so yeah, turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, wonderful.
Recording in progress.
All right. I see people have. I see Steven's here. That's good. Good to see you, Steven. I think that we don't seem to have a turnout yet.
Yeah, I don't know why.
All right. Well, I'm going to try something completely different anyway. So that's good. Steven, you have questions. We'll take them at the end. If you'll join, then we'll take their questions at the end. A little different. I'm going to talk about something, and then you can ask me questions on what I talked about or on anything in the situation also. But I decided, politics, and I keep telling you the politics, you should see through them. I may want to get to RFK a little bit. It's a little bit worth it. And I keep telling you at the same time, that's not where the answer lies. So I want to start something today completely different here. My wife always says I have to promote my book, which I don't. But this is a book that I wrote a couple years ago, Where the Heavens Kiss the Earth, Mystical Insights of Personal Growth. You can get it on Amazon. And what I'm going to do today is I want to give a introduction. This is a 7-part program that we set up really to maximize yourself, to really understand what it is about you that you can express, and how do you express it, and how do you get the right mindset to see the world properly. Because the reality is that, let's say people get me upset, and I react to that, and I have a knee-jerk response. So I'm not in charge of my life. Well, what are the mindsets the Torah tells us to see the world in a proper way that will allow me to fulfill myself, to act meaningful? So a number of years ago, I broke this into 7 different processes. And I want to give an overview of the next 7 weeks of this process. This is called an introduction to the 7 mindsets. Okay, and I got most of the theoretical and Torah concepts are found in the book. So if you want to get it, please get it. If you do read it and you like it, give a review, because I'm going to start to try to get some of these teachings out. But I just felt very important to, the politics is very negative. So I from leaving that for a few weeks here, to talk about how to live a fulfilled life. What are the 7 mindsets? How do I go and see the world in a way that is going to allow me to express my inner self? Again, this is not the 7 mitzvot. This is my own understanding of the mindsets, that if we take the Torah mindsets and we apply it into our lives, we will live a fulfilled life. Okay, so we're going to start with number 1 today. The first important mindset to live a fulfilling, meaningful life. What is number 1? What do you start with? I mean, it's a big question. How am I going to start to live a meaningful life? What's the number 1? What's the starting point? I hope you're on the edge of your seat. And the truth is, it is such a oldie but a goodie. Okay? This question, everyone has asked themselves at some point in their lives. Everybody. And the question is very simple. What the heck am I doing here? Why are we here? Why are we in this life? That's a pretty important question. And the craziest part about the question is, although everyone has asked this question as an adolescent, probably, at a certain point, you just kind of forget about it and you go forward. And you don't even think about it. Now, this is the existential question. Philosophers have asked this question for thousands of years. And unfortunately, they really don't have any good answers. They really don't. Probably the best one is Aristotle, which he explains essentially that the function of a oak tree is to become a tree. So the function of a person his purpose to become the greatest person he could be. According to Aristotle, what is that? A philosopher. So you ask the philosopher, the purpose of the philosopher. Okay. It's not, there's some truth to what he's saying, but the philosopher, I think there's better things to be. So what is the purpose of why we're here? What is it? Why are we living our lives? And I start with this because if we don't have this, we don't have the right backdrop to think about anything. So let's go through this question. Why am I here? Now, I'm going to give you first, in one line, what the sages tell us. But it's not going to make any sense. So don't take it literally. Scratch the surface to understand. The sages say that the purpose of life is to get the maximum ultimate pleasure. What? That makes no sense. What does that mean? I mean, was it advocacy, being an advocate for hedonism? God forbid. What does that mean? What do the sages mean that the purpose of life is to get the ultimate and maximum pleasure? So the question is, what is pleasure? Okay, what's pleasure? I like hamburgers. Yep. Okay. Like steak. Okay. Like ice cream. Okay. So the purpose to eat ice cream? Is that the purpose of life? So first, we understand like this. We got to understand what it means, pleasure, and why this is so important, how to get the pleasure. Okay? What does pleasure mean? It does not mean a limited physical pleasure. Although physical pleasure is not bad, there's a place for it as a stepping stone in life. So there are permissible pleasures and forbidden pleasures. And we understand that. If you look at somebody who spends his life chasing after forbidden pleasures, he will be a miserable person. And a person who spends his life chasing after meaningless pleasures will also be a miserable person. So let's understand what pleasures mean here. Now, there's two kinds of pleasures in the world. One is called a physical pleasure, and one is called a spiritual pleasure. Now, what's the difference? Well, let's understand. A physical pleasure, they all work on the same principle, all of them. You have a lacking, you need to have it filled. Once it's filled, you don't want it anymore. So what do? You wait for have the lacking again, and then you fill it. And then you're the lacking, you fill it, lacking, fill it. That's the whole process there, right there. So for example, if you come to my restaurant and I say, okay, you ordered a steak and you love steak and you ate the whole steak, it was delicious, fantastic, amazing. And then at the end, I say, okay, you know what? You're a great guy. And as a reward, I'm going to give you another whole steak. But the catch is you got to eat it right now. You're full, your stomach is popping. You just ate a giant, I don't know what size steak, a half a cow. So you don't want that pleasure anymore because the physical pleasures are all limited to time and space. Okay? And therefore they are limited. Now let's take an example of a spiritual type pleasure. What about love? So what do you say? Can you say, you know, I love you enough? No. There is no limit because it's not bound by a physical limit. So love, for example, which is already getting out of a coarse material experience, can now be an endless experience. I can love someone more and more and more. And not only that, it's incomparable, the physical to the spiritual pleasure. So if I have a guy who's having trouble with his son, he's driving him crazy. I say, Mr. Jones, you know, your son's driving you crazy, and I know you love hamburgers. I'm going to give you a life supply of hamburgers and rice-a-roni, the San Francisco treat, a life supply for your son, Billy. Now, who's going to agree to that? Nobody. Because you can't compare them. One is a spiritual pleasure. It's not bound by time and space. And one's a limited pleasure. You ate the hamburger, it's over. It's a low-level pleasure. So you want to move up on the chain of getting what's a higher pleasure. So physical pleasure, that's one. And if you do a permissible physical pleasure in the right balance, it's a good thing. We do not believe that a person is supposed to be an ascetic. But a person needs to understand the balance, because if he gets a forbidden pleasure, oh, that's gonna be bad. That's just gonna damage the person. If the person is focused on the low-level pleasures, they become a low-level person. I think I told you the story one time. I was once teaching in Hebrew University, and I wanted to show the people how the connection between the physical and the spiritual pleasures. So what happened was I passed out raisins, and I had everyone close their eyes, and I had to make a blessing. Because the sages tell us when you make a blessing on food, your pleasure is more, because you're prepared for the experience. It's a more meaningful experience. So I had everyone close their eyes, make this blessing on the raisin, put it, I said, chew it slowly. And they did. And the next day I saw one of the students, he said, Rabbi, you changed my life. I said, really? That's so nice. How's that? He says, now I love to eat. I eat all day and all. I said, I think you missed the point. The point was to get stuck on that. The point was to tune in and to connect your eating to a higher level. So I can get pleasure in my eating, but you know what? I get a lot more pleasure from something that's more spiritual, like love, or I'm doing something meaningful. And the truth is, the highest pleasure, which we can't really even imagine, I can't even describe it because we don't have words for it, is being able to experience the divine. That really is the highest pleasure. And I'll show it to you, because every single person, most people have had a moment where they felt somehow connected to something greater. You know, if they were under a starry sky or beautiful music, for a minute you felt like connected with more than just your little world. That's tasting, an experience of tasting what is beyond, what's not limited. And that is a certain aspect of having a connection to whatever degree you slide to experiencing the infinite, experiencing God. When that experience is going to be the fullest dimension, that's a tremendous joy. That's going to be potentially in this life and after this life. Okay? So when we say it's getting pleasure, I don't mean the purpose in life is to get low pleasure. It's to get the highest level pleasure, which is going to be to connect to the infinite. Now, let me explain how this works, because this gets quite amazing. I got a question for you. And you all could have asked me this question, but I'm sort of talking a lot today, so not I didn't let you ask me this. I'm sure you're all thinking it. But what I said really doesn't make much sense. If the purpose in life that God created us to give us the ultimate maximum pleasure, then why is the world so difficult? Why is there so much suffering? How many people come out with pleasure in this world? 1 in a million? I saw you have some. And we have it better than other generations in terms of these things. But, a lot of challenges in life, So if God is going to create us to give us pleasure, then would you create a world that would look like this? You probably would create a world that would be different. I always say it's like, the Baskin Robbins has 31 wonderful flavors. But God could give you 1 trillion. If I was imagining it, I would say if I wanted to give people pleasure, when they would be born, they would have the taste of vanilla ice cream on their mouths 24/7. Then when they turn 2, they get chocolate. 3, strawberry. You hit 40, you get rocky road 24/7. You're tasting the chocolatey flavor of the marshmallows. But that's not the way God made the world. Well, why not? So you have to understand what is true pleasure and how to get it. What is true pleasure? Now, Steve, I'll use it as an example here. I said to Stephen, I said, listen, Stephen, how would you like $10 billion? The world is now, with the inflation, your billions are worth millions now. So who knows? We'll give you $10 billion. Would you be happy?
Absolutely, 100%.
Absolutely. You'd be thrilled. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So now what happens is we make a big party. We give $10 billion to Stephen, and everyone loves him. Stephen's everyone's best friend. They have Stephen dolls. They have Stephen videos. They have Stephen statues. Everyone loves Stephen. You get a lot of friends when you get wealthy, right? That's the way it works.
Yeah. I don't know.
So now, all of a sudden, they want to make a giant celebration to honor you. That you are now the greatest guy in the world. They make a giant hall, and they bring thousands of people in, and they announce, ladies and gentlemen, yours and my favorite in the world, the greatest, the most amazing, Stephen. The crowd roars. Now you go up to the stage to get your award for being the greatest guy in the world, and you feel really good. But then at that moment that you're about to get the award, I walk in, the guy who gave you this money, and I wave, hey, remember me? Now, what happens to that feeling of, wow, I feel really great? Blows up. Because you know that you didn't do anything to create this. You like having the money, but you didn't make it. It's not yours. And every single human being in their core is built in a way that they want to earn it themselves. And that's the deeper reason why God put us into this difficult world. He could have created the world easy and perfect already in this connection. But then what am I doing? I'm nothing. I'm a robot. So what did God do? Your soul before you were created was getting this tremendous pleasure. And God put you into this world. And now all of a sudden you got forces pulling you left and right. And you have to choose between good and evil, lies and truth. And when you choose good, you actually earn that connection. I want you to understand this very deeply. It's not simply you earn the connection in the sense you're a good boy, here's a gift. Yeah, you get the world to come. That's why simpletons think about this. It's much deeper. Let me explain this. It's very, very deep and very important. If you take a guy who doesn't know good wine, give him bad wine, he tastes bad wine. I don't like wine. He has to develop his taste for it. Then when you give him the good wine, he appreciates it because he's developed a taste for it. He's learned what good wine is. When you listen to this very deep idea, everybody. When you spend your life acting righteously and choosing how to live a meaningful and righteous life, it's not that you get reward to experience God. You are now building the taste buds, the connectors to actually experience goodness. That's the ability to experience godliness. And you built it because you chose it. How can a person who, I once told you this, it's one of the scariest things, one of the worst sufferings in the afterlife. It's a certain type. I don't want to get into the particulars of what it's called right now, but a person who spends their whole life, the example I always gave you was he always eats hamburgers. He loves hamburgers. When he dies, he takes that consciousness with him, and he's now in a spiritual world looking for a hamburger. And he knows he can't, he knows it's not there. And he knows there's no pleasure, but he's built that consciousness. So what you're doing in this life now, God says, I can create the world. I want to give you good. I love every creation. I love all I want to give them all good. But the ultimate good is not to give it all to you, because then you're nothing. You're like an angel, which is very good, but you didn't have free will to earn this. So I have to put you into a world where there's good and evil. And as you choose, you earn, you become a wonderful person, and you're able to experience more godliness of a meaningful life in this life and certainly afterwards. And that's why in Jewish law, the highest level of charity is not giving someone money. Because what that does is, well, you embarrass him. First, he took it, and you feel great about yourself. You gave it to him. So a higher level is to give an anonymous gift, so the person's not embarrassed, and you don't know who you gave it to. That's a very high level. There's an even higher level. To give someone a loan or a job. Because what happens is now, if I give someone a loan, they say, thanks for the money. I built this. I feel I did something, and I'm giving you back what you gave me. That's the higher level. To give the person themselves their what's called their source of them, their humanity, which is the ability to build yourself. I said I wasn't going to get into politics today because we were going to try to build ourselves, but that's part of the problem in the system right now. They took that out of the system. The godly part about living a life, and this is one of the mistakes in the Constitution, where it says that the pursuit of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, it should have said life, liberty, and the pursuit of meaning. That would have been a better way to say it, because people think, oh, I'm happy, like just sitting there doing nothing. Well, maybe you are, but you're not, because a human being will not be happy with that. So a person takes what they're about and they just focus on very low-level things. They're not really attaining happiness. Happiness is a byproduct of living a meaningful life. When I do things that are right and I feel they are right and they are good, a feeling of happiness comes over me because I feel I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's why it's a complete mistake. If the pursuit of happiness means 3 cars, 4 cars, 12 houses, how come all these people are miserable? How come every one of these stars is divorced? I once thought about it. It's like the craziest thing. Some of the greatest love songs like ever written, like really classic love songs. And you listen to them and you realize that almost every one of those songs that were written for someone, they're divorced right now. It's kind of depressing. It's kind of depressing. But really, that's the truth. It means that, okay, so you had everything, but you didn't know how to actually maximize what you had. Now, how do you go and live a meaningful life? Let's go. I'll tell you 2 things here, 2 important things here. The 7 mitzvot, or for Jews, it's 13 mitzvot. The word mitzvah is translated as commandment. And that is true. That's one level. It is 7 commandments. 13 commandments, a mitzvah. But there's another word for mitzvah, and the word mitzvah is from the word savta, which means connection. And what the mitzvah does is, it's a physical act in this world that connects you to a higher dimension. So there's 2 ways that you live a meaningful life. They're both the same. One is the general and one is the specific individual. The general one is somebody who lives their lives doing the mitzvot, the connections, the commands, the connections that God gave them on how to live a meaningful life, the 7 Noachide laws to be righteous, the 13 commandments for the Jews to be holy. A person who lives their lives under those parameters, with those qualities, starts to sense, I am living a purposeful life. What's your purpose? What's your purpose in life? You know what your purpose is? Your purpose is to be able to make the world a better place through your actions, and thereby make yourself greater, and thereby fix the world yourself, and to be able to connect with the infinite. That's the pleasure I told you in the beginning. The purpose is pleasure, but how do you get to that pleasure? You get to that pleasure through earning it by choosing correctly, doing the mitzvot that are appropriate to you to do, the righteous way to act and live your life, which will now say, my life is meaningful. I am doing things to make the world better because God put me in this world to improve the world. Now, not everyone's got to have these giant, pictures of, I'm going to be the CEO of this, that, and say this and say, not everyone is going to have that. Those who saw RFK speaking yesterday, it was very nice. He said, listen, he felt that he had said to God, he wants to go and help people to get out of this toxic world that the corporations are shoving at people's throats without them realizing it. Those who saw his speech. So the person is saying, I have a noble pursuit to do kindness to make the world a better place. That is one of the, even though it's not one of the 7 Noachide commandments, it is the central, the positive command, which is charity and all things of that nature. And that is part of the Noachide laws. So there's 2 ways that we start to go and to live a purposeful life. One is in the general sense. If I do the mitzvot correctly, with all of their contexts, I'm a person who's very careful not to steal. I'm a person who respects other people's space, their needs, their qualities. Don't give them bad nicknames. I respect them and not to encroach upon their territory in any way, shape, or form. That's the person who's living his life righteously. He's doing the mitzvah of not stealing, of understanding the boundaries God put in this world. Okay? So when a person is starting to do those things, they're actually now saying, I have a purpose in life. My purpose is to live righteous. Now, if I'm not going to change on a giant scale, but I'm going to change the world in my local scale. Like the famous rabbi who said, when he was young, he said, I'll change the whole world. And then he got older, he says, you know what? I'm going to change my country. And then he got older and he said, I'll change my city. He said, you know what? At least I'll change my town. And his old man said, I'll change myself. Okay? You start changing yourself, it has an effect. You're acting like a kind person. I would encourage everyone on an amazing thing to do tomorrow. So Victor Miller says this is one of his important lessons in life on how to develop yourself. Tomorrow, I challenge everyone to go do one act of kindness that you think, I want to do an act of kindness to make the world a better place, to live a meaningful life as God commands me, as is what I'm supposed to be doing in this world, and I want no one to know about it. And it could be a tiny thing. It could be a tiny thing. You just do one small thing, but you're doing it consciously. It's a new way to understand. We're not flopping through life like, well, what are we doing here? We'll put another TV station on. No, what we're doing is we're building ourselves and building the world. And everyone has a mission. 7 Noachide laws mostly are in the not to do, to keep the parameters of reality in the righteous world. The Jewish people have the 613 commandments, which is the fuel, the inner fuel. That's why it has to be a 24/7 operation. But everyone has their mission to choose correctly, help perfect themselves, and as much as their environment will allow, and thereby they are doing their purpose in the world. And they're starting to start the process of experiencing the infinite because they are becoming God-like. Just like God is compassionate, you be compassionate. You're starting to connect. Now, the second part of how to do this, the how-to of living a purposeful life, is the first one was the general, the commandments. Then there's a second part that's a little bit more difficult because it's individual. What qualities do I have that God gave me that I can do? So, like, I want to give a shout out to Dan and to Rod. So Dan and Rod and all of you here, said, listen, we think that letting people know about the Torah and God's will for all of humanity is an important thing, and dedicating our time to do it. I was inspired to start this series. I saw Rod had done a beautiful thing. He cut up some of the talks that we gave, which are very long. We go for a long time, and not people's attention span is less than a minute and a half now. And Rod cut some of the things up for people. So a person sees a blast of an idea that can change their lives. That got me excited. I said, yeah, it's fantastic. So there people are thinking about what qualities did God give me? And he gave every single person unique qualities that they could do something special. It doesn't have to be on the level of, creating this giant charity corporation. It can be very, very local. It's because it starts with whatever it is that are the qualities that you have in life. So a person now has to ask themselves and say, if God put me into this world, because he didn't make the world perfect. He could have, but he chose not to. He chose to leave the mission for mankind. So now what am I going to do to do my purpose in this process? And when you do that, you start to live a purposeful life. That is the tremendous, tremendous understanding. And that's what the sages say. The purpose of life, God wanted to give you the maximum ultimate pleasure. He didn't want to hurt you, God forbid. He wanted to do that. But what's the maximum pleasure? It's to earn the connection to the infinite by making yourself godlike, by making yourself wonderful, by making yourself kind, by living in a world where they're pulling you in different directions. And that is happening so difficult, so harshly in the world right now. But when a person chooses that, they become that much greater. The person sees through lies and says, I don't want this. I want to be on the side of right. I want to do what's good. Then what they're doing is they're building themselves and they're corroborating peace in the world. Their corresponding place in the world, they're building that too. And that means they're doing their function. They're leading a purposeful life. You live a purposeful life, you're happy. When you live a life that's not purposeful, you're not happy. It's very, very simple. Very, very simple. Every time you see a person and he's got all the pleasures, all the stuff, and he's miserable, that's why. Because it doesn't do anything. It's level one. It's like a stepping stone. Good. God gave you, allowed you certain pleasures. Yes, he gave that to you. So then you can grow up and move to a greater pleasure. Move from a hamburger to love. Move from love to a mission. Move to a purpose in life, to experiencing the divine. That's what it's about. So I think that this in my system here is the first thing to do. The first thing to do is to live a life where you say to yourself that the reason why I'm here is for a real purpose. It's not arbitrary. I really don't understand how people who believe the world is random, how they get up every morning. It's like terrible. It's like what? The world has no meaning? It's a cosmic accident? Yeah, well, that's why the people are so stupid. Because what they have to do is they have to just fill themselves up and just keep drinking beer and fill themselves up because it's meaningless. That's terrible. That's a really harsh, false reality. Life is very, very meaningful. It's very, very meaningful. And the meaning of life is God created an incredible world, a beautiful world with its challenges, and put a human being in the middle and said, now you choose. And when you choose properly, you build yourself, you build the world, and you connect back to your source. And that is your ultimate pleasure. Okay, I'm going to open up for questions, comments, and ideas.
Who will be the first? Rabbi, earlier, when you first started, you were talking about, if we were created for pleasure, then why on God's green earth is this not so pleasurable? The life that we live. It's difficult. It has tough times. But I think one of the things that we've learned is part of the pleasure is to struggle and to see the reward and see the self-improvement and see where you've come from. I think that if we didn't have those kind of struggles, this life would be way too boring. I mean, I couldn't imagine tasting vanilla ice cream for the rest of my life. I would never want it. I would never desire it. Right?
Well, you see, yes and no, because what happens is like this. There is the concept that you need to know the opposite to understand the other side. If you didn't have any pain or discomfort, you couldn't have any pleasure because you wouldn't know and there really is a concept like that God put us in the world to understand the work and the struggle. Now, the reality is that this is one phase in reality. There's a phase in reality after we die. And the phase in reality now is focused on the work component. There is a reality that switches, and it switches more into what's called the reward component. Not that there's not still work, but it changes. So what happens is that this reality now where I'm choosing and I have that ability, that means that's the stage we're in now, and that's the purpose of life. In the stages after this life, it changes, goes to a different dimension. That dimension does have a higher level of clarity, and therefore we could talk about that as like the reward. But it requires first another dimension where a person is choosing and making the decisions. Without that, then you never earned it. You can't really get it because you won't appreciate it. You won't have it. You'll always have, like I said before, the example I gave with Stephen. I said, listen, if a person gets something he doesn't earn, it's not his. Just the reality. It's like God made us. God made us. The way the great philosopher, Kabbalist, the Ramchal says, he says, God is the only one that's intrinsically perfect. The closest we can get is trying to perfect ourselves. That's Hebrew godlike. You could try to live a proper life. And those are the commandments. Whatever you have, the 7 commandments, the 13 commandments, and to do them thoroughly. That means, like, if, in the 7 commandments, if you're thinking about, like, not stealing, really work on understanding people's space and their needs, and then move into a level of giving, doing kindness, which is one of the components. So this is just a very important way to start, because if I give you the other ideas of the 7 mindsets, but if it doesn't start with the concept that every situation I have now, that I'm in, the world I'm in right now, is my gold mine. The famous story, that famous analogy that one of the great sages, Chavetz Chaim, gave. He said, in an analogy of a place, he lived in Europe, and he heard about this land far away called the Darklands. And the Darklands, there was like almost no light. It was dark almost the whole year. Very, very little light. But there were gold and diamonds and jewels throughout the streets. So this guy goes and he says to his wife, "Listen, we're living in Europe, we're poor, in the 1900s, or I'm going to the Darklands. It's a hard journey. It's a year boat ride. And then you got to stay for a year till the next boat comes once a year. It's a 3-year journey." So the guy says, "I got to do it. We're poor, and we have no food here. We got to make it happen." So the guy takes a journey to the Darklands. He gets there, and he sees, that's true, that the streets are filled with jewels and diamonds and rubies, and he starts picking them up. He's like, people saying, hey, slow down, buddy. What are you doing? Don't you get it? In this town, the gold and diamonds are worth nothing. We have that all over the place. In this town, since there's no light, what we value is fats and oils. You want to be a rich guy in our town, you got to gather the fats and oils. So the guy said, "I got 3 years here, might as well." So he gathers the fats and gathers the oils, and becomes a rich man. He just has, Joe's Fats, and shortening store. And he's a rich guy. He's got this kind of fat, that kind of fat, this kind of shortening, that kind of shortening. Okay. And he's a rich guy. And he's there year, 2, 3 years. And he's a rich guy living in this town. And one day, all of a sudden, he hears the whistle blow, the ship's whistle. Ooh, all aboard. He realizes, oh my gosh, it's time for the boat that goes back to Europe. He runs, but he has to take all of his fats that he just saved up. He has his oil and his all his fats. He's got to take it. He takes it, puts it on his back, starts carrying it. And as he's getting to the boat, he goes, wait a minute. I forgot to take the jewels. He goes and they say, "Time is now, boat's leaving." Takes one jewel, sticks in his pocket, and he makes it onto the boat. And then he starts the journey on the boat. Day passes, 2, 3. Smell it. What is that awful smell? It smells like a rancid fat. Open up his chest, a giant box there, and all the fats is rancid. They throw it overboard. Gets home, his wife greets him. "You did it, you made it, Dad, you're amazing." And he says, "I don't want to talk about it." He goes to sleep, he's depressed, and she rummages through his coat, she finds a diamond. She goes, she has it appraised, she goes, "We're rich. And says, "Yeah, I know. But you don't understand. Where I was, there were diamonds and jewels all over the place. And I wasted my whole time chasing after fats." The rabbis say this is the analogy to the soul come into this world. In this world, you could do meaningful, purposeful things. You could do mitzvot. You could do things that last for eternity. But you get into worlds of different currency here. What's the currency? I don't know. Currency is, I don't know. You be a big shot, I don't know. You go to Las Vegas. You have 3 TVs. You have 10 TVs. I don't know, whatever the idiocy is. And you get stuck in things that are meaningless. And that's what the news constant barrage is. This is what you should chase after. This is valuable. No, That's not what's valuable. Valuable is to live a purposeful life. And that is the mitzvot that you have. Whether you're Jewish or you're not Jewish, you have tons of good things you can do. And as you do those good things, you are starting to a purposeful life. And as you start to focus on what is your unique talents and you bring them out, you really feel fulfilled. And it works hand in hand. Once you do that, so your life is purposeful and you're actually starting to connect to the real pleasure. The real pleasure is to connect to the infinite because you're acting in a godly manner. And it's up to you. And that's why it's so hard. So what you're saying, Rod, is beautiful, but you have to remember there is a time here where it is a time to do. And society tells you the opposite. Society tells you, hey, like there was I have a singer I used to love. His name is Jackson Brown. It's like Jackson Brown. You heard Jackson Brown, very good songwriter. And he had this line once, and it was a nice line, but it was completely false. His line was, "It's a hotel at best. You're here as a guest. You better make yourself at home while you're waiting for the rest." That's wrong. Jackson, I like you. You're a great musician. But that's wrong. It's not a hotel at best. You're not here as a guest, and you're not make yourself at home and wait for the rest. You have to make it right now. You have to live a meaningful life. And your society is telling you, no, just fill up. It's the pursuit of happiness. What's the happiness? Happiness is the 10th television set, the 4th car. I don't know what it is. No, happiness is that I have a purpose in life. What's that purpose in life? God puts you into a world is not perfected yet. And every single human being on the planet has the ability to make his area and himself and those connected with his portion of the world better. That's purposeful. That makes you happy. Makes you happy by definition. It's not easy to do. If it was easy, then it wouldn't mean anything. But it's not. You'll pull on your right, pull on your left. It's hard to do. It's hard to be nice sometimes. It's hard to be. It's hard not to. I mean, I was like, you think, 7 commandments are very easy. They are, but they're not. The 7 mitzvot are, in one sense, yes, they are easy because they are like, okay, keep yourself straight, keep yourself right. You want to go to a higher level. You want to take the commandment of really understanding people's space and start to expand it by really respecting their needs and their space. Good, do that. Doing a basic level, fine. But so on one hand, it's not that hard. You can live a righteous life. The 6 and 13 commandments are a lot. They are, and thank God. I mean, we love them. I'm thrilled to be able to do them. But you have to say, the command means the moment you get up to the moment you go to sleep, and especially while you're sleeping. The great sages, when they're sleeping, they're doing they're the great sages. I hope I'll be able to be zocha and the merit to do this one day. But the great sages, when they're sleeping, I can also sleep as a mitzvah. If I go to sleep and I say I'm going to sleep now with the idea that I will be tomorrow healthier and strong to do good things. And all my 8 hours of sleep is all a mitzvah. That's true. But there were sages who, when they went to sleep, they had tremendous understandings of their learning. There's one famous story of the great Kabbalist, the Arizal, and on the Sabbath he used to take a nap. And people think, oh, he napped. No, he wasn't napping because he was tired. He was having another experience. And one time he was taking his nap on the Sabbath, and one of the students saw his mouth was moving the whole time. So the student went and he put his ear by the rabbi's mouth to hear what he was saying, because he was sleeping, but he was talking in his sleep. He was saying something, and he knew he was being meaningful. And as soon as he put his ear to the rabbi's mouth, I woke up. And he looked at the student and said, it would take me 80 years to explain to you what they just showed me in the dream. But God just showed me. So, there's different, okay, yeah, I don't, I'm not having that yet, but I hope, working towards, we're trying to. But whatever a person's mission is, everyone's got a mission. Everyone has something that they can do. And your mindset's got to switch. The first mindset is purpose. To know that you have a purpose in this world, and the purpose is to be able to live a proper life, to choose good, and thereby help perfect yourself and your part in the world. And when you do that, your life is meaningful, and you actually connect to eternity. Because you're connecting to godliness. Because you're acting godlike. That's what it is. Okay, very deep topic, but it has to be the first one, because without knowing that we have a purpose, we're not gonna be able to do the next ones. Any other questions on what I said?
Anybody at all? Dan, is there anybody that has questions online?
Rabbi, I'm having a chat with a regular online who's an artist and maybe struggles a little bit about personal purpose. Is it difficult? And I've been trying to, chit chat about just how to that a true living mind doesn't have a finish line, in the sense of I finally punched my ticket, and so real tough. He asked me a question. He says, do you think the painter Van Gogh achieved his life goal through his art?
Do I think so? Look, I don't know Van Gogh. I never met him. Yeah, he committed suicide, cut his ear off. He had an interesting way of seeing the world. So I would not, I don't want to say what it was. I don't know, but I don't believe. Well, let me explain what I'm saying here. I don't believe that art, for art's sake, is enough. It's nice to be able to be a talented person, but when I do my art, that could be part of my mission if I'm good. I'm an artist, but then I got to think, how is my art? How can that make the world a better place? So it helps me to have my expression of myself, but I have to think. I think now. Well, I want to. If my goal is, I'm not sure who asked the question. What's the person's name who asked this question, Dan? Oh, Cookie Monster. Okay, so all right. So Cookie Monster as an artist. So as an artist, what person should do is say, okay, this is a skill that God gave me that I have. So therefore, how do I use this to go and to make the world a better place? Even if it's just my art, but even just that mindset in the art itself, the creation of the art, people will look at your art and feel differently. If you're thinking, because when you're thinking, I want to paint the world. God made a beautiful world. I want to, whatever. Let's say you like painting. I don't know. You like painting landscapes, mountains, mountain range, whatever. If you say, "Oh, this is God's beautiful world, I want to paint it," the perceiver, the observer, when they look at it, they will sense in the art a statement of something that will affect them. So therefore, you're taking the art and you're using it for a higher dimension, and that really is, and that's why in the story of the three sons of Noah, that's what happens. He has three sons. He was Shem, Ham, and Yefes. And Yefet, which was Greece, it said that he will live in the tents of Shem. And there's certain laws that we learn about the Greek language there. And the word Greece, which is called Yefet in Hebrew, is also beauty. And Greece epitomized aesthetic beauty. But it was only good when it was used towards a greater purpose. When the whole story of Hanukkah happens, the Greeks cut off the idea of aesthetic beauty from a higher purpose. And that's why their gods were people, because they were the first humanists in that sense. And the human being was the center of the world. There was nothing beyond. And therefore, the beauty was only for that sake, and it had no purpose that it was reaching out to beyond that. So that becomes a problem. That becomes Van Gogh. That becomes Starry Night. I mean, what a painting. But obviously, he wasn't expressing that. He killed himself and he cut his ear off. He wasn't really seeing the world as having a goal that God's bringing into, and I am a player. I am a member of that community to make this world a better place. He didn't see that, obviously. If he did, he wouldn't have killed himself.
I've got a question. I've just got a quick question.
Yeah, please.
Genesis 2:16 summarizes, from what I'm learning, the Sheva Mitzvah. The question I have for you in the first two words, just to clarify, so I put my mind at rest when reading that particular scripture. Can you please just define Lord and God? Just very simply, what does Lord and God mean in its? Because each word of 2:16 relates to the Sheva Mitzvah. So to have clarity on, I mean, I understand Lord is, I think it's a prohibition or something like that. But is Lord is like God is Hashem, and Lord, would Lord be like Elohim, or am I seeing that wrongly?
Well, again, it kind of in English doesn't really translate so well. They do translate the name Lord Elohim into Lord, and the name of Hashem into God. They do translate it that way. But it doesn't. In English, it doesn't really have much,
Wait.
It doesn't have, like Lord, for example. Are you in England, Stephen? Where are you?
Yeah, England. Yeah.
You got a whole house of lords.
Yeah.
So what happens is that the name Elohim is the name for the ruler, God as the source, the power. The name Elohim is Bala Kochot Kulam, the master of all the powers. And that's why they use it in English and in Hebrew. They'll use that term to say, oh, he's in the House of Lords, meaning he's got a power base. The name Elohim is the source of all the powers. So, that's why the word even in English, Lord, could be used as referring to the divine, as God is the source of all powers, or it could be used sometimes in the non-holy, the mundane terminology of being a power source.
It is quite ridiculous though, because thank you very much for giving that understanding. But just to mention the word Lord in a kind of a pagan, that which is outside sort of Malachi and into this kind of pagan ideology. But this Christian, well-to-do, and he's up the chain, up the ladder, and he's got a family and everything. Nice fella. But I said to him, JC isn't mentioned anywhere within the 24 books of Tanakh. We have a deep conversation, but in the messaging, he said, well, the word Lord is mentioned, and he just assimilate that means obviously something to do with their way of thinking.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a little funny. I heard from one rabbi said once that he asked, there was nuns, I think. They asked if they wanted to come to the synagogue and they wanted to say Psalms. Could they come in? And the rabbi said, yeah, but let me see the book first. So they looked at the Christian book, and it said in the end, it's the name of JC and this and that. So he said, you can't say that part. So in the synagogue, so if you want me, not in the synagogue. So they said, well, I don't understand, why not? It's in the Psalms. He said, well, it's not in the Psalms. It was you added that. It's not in the original Psalms. So they said, oh, they never could understand why the Jews didn't believe in their God if it said it right in their book, but it doesn't say it in the Hebrew. So whenever you have an English version, you got a problem. I mean, even the kosher translations, like the Art Scroll, they're obviously very limited, and more than, and to say God is a name, it's not it's a question of it. Do people mean it as referring to Hashem? So does it have any holiness? The discussion in Jewish law, but the idea of why God has different names is does not translate in English. The reason why God has different names in the Torah is because we don't understand God in his essence. That's impossible. That is a non-Jewish concept. It's impossible. Once you think you understand God, then you are God. Then you've made yourself equal to God because you can understand him. You cannot understand God in any way, shape, or form. All you understand is how God chooses to relate to us. And all the various names in the Torah are the ways that God chooses to relate to us as the actions that he manifests. Those are the different names of God. So in English, it's like doesn't have really any meaning. It's just like kind of like looking for another word.
Thank you. Thank you. Brilliant.
All right, guys. What was that?
Brilliant teaching, and I'll look for the book online. Thank you very much.
Yes. Those who came late, I'm gonna say. My wife always tells me I never tell anyone, but I'm going to now. Yeah, this is the book. If you want to get it alive, Where the Heavens Kiss the Earth.
Yeah, I put the picture up,
personal growth.
I put the picture up earlier. Lara on YouTube had asked if you could show the book at the end, so I posted the YouTube link on the. Or I posted the Amazon link to it on the YouTube broadcast, so they can get access.
Great. And what I'm going to do for the next few weeks, I'm going to go through the different mindsets. Today was the beginning. And this is an introduction. I do a course on it. Maybe we'll do it sometime together, how to internalize these concepts, which is the very hard work. But the concept I want you to start getting. The first concept is your life is purposeful. You have a purpose. That should feel great. And your purpose is to be in a world with the challenges. You have the ability to choose the right thing. And as you choose to live your life righteously, you are building yourself and those around you, and thereby acting godlike and making your connection to the infinite in this life and after.
Very, very useful. The chats in the YouTube were livelier today than in a long time. We've had about 107 viewers so far, and yeah, it's good to see. Excellent material, Rabbi. We thank you so much for that, and we look forward to hearing more next week, Hashem willing, and we just know we're all praying for your safety there, and we wish you and your family well. And so on that note, till next week, have a wonderful, wonderful week, everybody. Bye for now.
Take care. Bye.
Shalom, you guys. Take care. See you.